Greetings. Today, I'm not talking about a story. I'm talking about, well, stores, shopping malls, restaurants, that kind of thing. You know, it's interesting in the fact that when I was much younger, when I first moved to Central New York, this place was thriving. There were a bunch of malls, strip malls, all over the place. And life was pretty good back then. You could decide whether you wanted to go to a place that was pretty much in your neighborhood, pretty much, or if you wanted to drive far east, far west, further south, not so much north, but still, there were all kinds of things. A bunch of different types of restaurants all over. Now, as of 2025, a lot of that is gone. A lot of the stores that used to be very popular stores, some big name stores, small stores, you could kind of see how they might struggle, especially in the new economy, but the big stores, a lot of those are just gone, and the malls are gone. So I want to know if you guys, wherever you're living in the States, in the country, how are things going where you are? Let me tell you a little bit about my area. So we have a mall locally. It's called Destiny Mall. Used to be called Carousel Center because one of the things that they put in was this gigantic, big carousel, which is on, well, I guess we'll call it the third floor. We'll go with that for now. And it was a thing where it was supposed to be for families. So a lot of people would bring their kids to it, and they would ride the carousel with the up and down horse, which I've never been on one of those things, and obviously at my age, that's never going to happen. But that used to be a big thing. And we have a big food court, and the food court does well. It slows down a little bit during the rest of the week, but on Fridays and Saturdays, packed. And it does well. Sure, there's been a few of those fast food restaurants that have come and gone, here and there. But overall, they do really well. They have two real restaurants in there. One of them, it's changed names a couple of times. I don't even know if it's still open, to tell you the truth. And the other one is now called Coco's, which is a Japanese restaurant. It's not bad. Not bad. There's better, if you ask me. But still, at least we have that. But Destiny Mall is the largest mall in the state. It's the only real mall that has survived being in Central New York. So that's a pretty cool thing, you would think. And for the most part, it's still hanging on, but it's hanging on by a thread, because the people who actually are the major owners of it also invested in 4 or 5 other malls in the state. And right now, they are in deep trouble. They basically had to sell some of their interest in some of those. And one, they've just been able to make a restructuring deal with the state government so that they didn't have to give that one up, because it's starting to do a little bit better, and Destiny's still doing a little better. But I want to talk about certain things that you might have where you are. Let me know what you think. For instance, there used to be a store here called Bonwit Teller. I have no idea what that was because I never went in there. But that didn't last all that long. By the way, the mall has been here over 30 years, about 35 years, if you want to know the truth. Bonwit Teller is gone. Kaufman's was a big store at the time. Sold a lot of clothes and, some little minor trinket kind of things, whatever. Gone. J.C. Penney's. J.C. Penney's used to be one of my favorite stores because you could go in and you could buy clothes and you could get, the ties and all these other kind of things, whatever. And they had some other stuff in there, jewelry, and that was kind of neat. Gone. Chappell's. I think Chappell's might have been just a local store. I'm not really sure. But Chappell's was actually located in 5 or 6 of the malls in this area. Gone. They were clothing. It was kind of nice, You never really saw tons of people in there, but it was a regular group of people, and the stuff that they sold were, higher than if you went to Sears. And we'll talk about Sears. I don't think there's a Sears store left in the country. If I'm wrong, someone let me know. No Sears here. And we had a Sears in Destiny Mall, and we had one in a place that's called Great Northern Mall, which is one I'm really close to. That's now closed, and they closed Sears first. And Sears is where I used to buy well, all my technology stuff. So I got my computers at Sears, and I bought my refrigerator at Sears, the dishwasher, all these things. I bought it all at Sears. Gone. And now you have to try to find someone locally who will come and fix your appliance if you need it and doesn't try to, charge you way over what it should cost to fix stuff like that. But that's just how that is. But that was really a big deal when it closed. And the strange thing is that 2 years after the Sears building had closed, the people who still own that building were going to try to move someone else in there, and the ceiling collapsed. And of course I had to hop in the car the next day and go see it. It was amazing. It was amazing to see. No one broke in there, but one of the things is during the pandemic, they used to open up the mall so that people could walk, and Sears had been closed by that point. I'm just imagining that, what that would have been like if there had been someone else in that mall. So that's kind of scary. It was a place called Lechmere. No idea what that was. Obviously, I never made it in there. Oh yes, by the way, like I said, I'm looking at my list here. There was a place called Hills. Hills might be a local store also, but that didn't last long at the mall. There was a place called Filene's Basement, and it was actually in the basement level of the mall, and it was huge. And they sold a lot of, clothes and shoes and whatever stuff. That didn't last all that long. CompUSA. How many of y'all know about CompUSA? CompUSA was a scam. They were big. It looked so beautiful inside. And what it turned out to be was there was these guys who owned CompUSA, and they were telling you that we sold all this great stuff, and, we will put your computers together if that's what you want. And it turns out that a lot of those things that you bought, that wasn't actually what you were getting. What you saw on the box was not what was in the box. And I had a problem with them back in 2006 when I was consulting at a hospital in Westchester County, and I discovered that because they gave me the hard drive back, and when I looked at it when I got back to the hotel, I said, wait a minute, this isn't right. And the one that they put in my laptop, which is, why I took it there to be fixed, that wasn't mine because someone else's name was on it. So, they went out. That was going to have to happen because they were, they were crooked. And I think they're totally gone everywhere else. Then we have, a whole bunch of restaurants. Different stuff. Like, we had Circuit City. We had, Kmart. I think Kmart was everywhere. My mother, when we first moved to Central New York, that used to be the place we would go, and she would buy me all these clothes, and, for her and some for Dad. Gone. They were all over this place. There were probably 7 or 8 Kmarts at best, but they're all gone. And, that's just wild. Now, there's still some big stores that are left, but things have changed a lot. For instance, we have Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, I don't know if they're all over the country. I think that they are, but they have, I think there's only 2 or 3 of them left here. But here's the thing. It's a massive store. The one that's in Destin, it's a massive store. I don't think in the last couple of years there's been more than 9 or 10 people who are there in case you need to ask questions about something. And sometimes, if you're there early in the, just before afternoon or whatever, you can't find anybody. Because I went there to try to find some sneakers, and there was nobody to ask anything about these sneakers. I need to ask some questions. I have neuropathy in my feet, so I was hoping to, get something that they might recommend. Nothing. And they really only have 2 cash registers, one on the bottom floor, one upstairs, where they used to have 4. It's not a busy place anymore. And there's another one that's closer to where I live, but it doesn't get a lot of traffic either. However, they probably get as much traffic as the giant one that's at the mall. So, at least they have, like I said, they have the same number of people, but because they don't have, however many might be going into the store, they're pretty good. What do we have? Oh, TJ Maxx used to be one of those kind of stores where you could pretty much go in there and buy almost anything. Gone. Apple. Apple is probably the most active store in Destiny, because you had Apple and you had the people who used to make regular, computers that were non-Apple. For instance, we still have Verizon there, but mainly they sell, just tablets and phones, which I guess is the thing to do. And a lot of times there's only one person in this entire store. On the weekend, they might have 2 people in there. How does that compete with Apple? I refuse to buy Apple, so that's never going to happen. But still, that's just amazing. But the thing is, there's not a lot of people going in there. So what do? I understand that. We do have an IKEA coming. And I've never been in an IKEA. And I had to look up what IKEA was because I didn't know what they did. But there are a few people who are looking for it to come. It's not going to be a massive store like I guess they have in other places across the country. But it's still going to be big. And they're moving into a space that was held by a company called At Home, which was, I'll just say it this way. They had all kind of statues and the things you put flowers in, and they had pictures, and they had, whatever. I thought it was fascinating. I would go in there and just walk around. Every once in a while, I'd buy something that I thought was cool, and I would say to myself, at this point, I'm glad I'm not married anymore, because if I bought any of that and took it home, she wouldn't have liked any of it. But still, that's how that was. So, that's interesting. Now, let's talk about restaurants, because maybe you have some of these or had some of these and they're gone. Outback Steakhouse. Oh my God, I loved Outback. I loved their food. It was really tasty. And then I think it was maybe 3.5 years ago, I went there once for dinner just by myself, and it tasted horrible. And I had always loved their food. And then like 6 months after that, gone. They just totally shut it down, and it was done with. IHOP. IHOP used to have, I'll say maybe 7 or 8 IHOPs in the area. As far as I know right now, there's only 2. And of course, I live close to one of them. My area, I live close to a whole bunch of things, so I have a lot of options. But they're dying out. Every once in a while, I decide that I'm going to go there to maybe have breakfast at lunchtime. And there's almost nobody in there. They may have like 2 people who, are the wait staff. And they also are the ones who go up when you're ready to pay for something. But, it's just on its last legs. And IHOP used to taste, it was the best breakfast that I'd ever had, but it died out. And, that's just how it is, I guess. In the mall, there used to be a place called the World of Beer. Now, people loved going to the World of Beer. The drinking people, they loved that. And it also had all these fancy liquors and whatever. Like I said, I'm a non-drinker. I've never had an alcoholic drink in my life. But they would be packed on a Friday night. So it would be, really a big deal. They had a place called Kahunaville, which, based on the song that Jimmy Buffett did. And it never really took off in the Syracuse area. It looked kind of smarmy. That's just my thought. It looked kind of goofy or whatever. I really wasn't crazy about the food, but it still stuck around for a while. And then there was Fridays, and I liked Friday's food, but I really liked Friday's food when I was consulting down in Westchester County, because Fridays was 5 minutes away from the hotel I was staying in, and I ate at Fridays at least, once every 2 weeks, at least that. And it was really good food. And I even have a 64-ounce mug with Fridays on it. And it's red. Red is my favorite color. So, of course, I bought it. And I had this thing about 64-ounce mugs. I had 11 of them at one point. Now I only have 2. I think my ex threw away almost all of them because that was just her thing. Anyway, the overall question that I'm asking, putting it out there, have you guys had big malls, small malls? Have you had stores that are no longer there? Have you had stores that have survived? I'm not mentioning places like oh God, I can't think of the place right now, whatever. But I mean, there's certain places that have always been there, and they're probably be around for a while. They suffered a little bit during the beginning of the year. They suffered a little bit during when we had the COVID thing going on. But here's Walmart. That's what I was thinking of. Walmart, because we used to have a bunch of Walmarts in this town, and we don't have a bunch of Walmarts anymore. Costco is killing it. Costco is doing it, and we have BJ's wholesale, and they're doing okay, but they're not doing what they used to do. And they've made certain changes. They've, at least they have kept the prices down when you can buy stuff in bulk. So that's where I go. There's certain things I go there to buy bulk when I need it. Works well for me. It costs less than getting it at any of the grocery stores, and you get a lot more for it. So that's just my thing. But like I said, done with that part. I'm curious to see what happens where you are. Share with me. Is everything still the same? Have things gotten better? Have things gotten worse? Share. My name is Mitch Mitchell. I wish you all a wonderful day.